Welcome to But For Real, a variety show podcast co-hosted by two therapists who also happen to be loudmouth feminists. I'm Valerie, your resident elder millennial child-free cat lady.
And I'm Emerson, your resident chronically online Gen Z brat. And on the show, we'll serve up a new episode every other week that will take you on a wild ride through the cultural zeitgeist, mental health, and beyond.
You'll definitely laugh and TBH sometimes maybe cry a little because this is a silly and serious show.
Buckle up, my friends, and let's get into today's episode. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to But For Real. Maybe your favorite podcast, favorite podcast you haven't heard of yet, your girlfriend's favorite podcast, whoever. I'm so pumped to be back this week and just to kind of kick off the episode with a little author's note, a little podcaster's note that the structure and format of this episode isn't going to be too different than our other episodes. As you can tell from the title, we are embedding our Living Your Activism series, which Valerie will be explaining and getting further into later in the episode. But this week, I'm kind of kicking off all of our main segments, doing the do. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here and kind of do this solo and see what happens. Get weird alone. This is your sign to be weird alone because you have to live with yourself forever. And that's existential and means something. So I'm so pumped. Let's kick off our episode for today. Now it's time for our first segment, Tea and Crumpets, where we tell you what we can't stop talking about this week. So my tea and crumpies for the week is I got a hair glaze or hair gloss. I'm not sure like what the beauty world leans into, like what we've coined it as. But if you are watching and you may not notice, and that's okay. Not a lot of people in my life did because, you do something to yourself and like a tiny, minute change, but it feels huge to you. And then everyone's like, oh, I literally wouldn't have noticed if you hadn't said. Yeah, that's kind of giving what this hair glaze is. I got my hair cut like a week ago. So I was kind of like riding that post-haircut vibe, but it still wasn't scratching the itch deep enough. Like I needed more. But I'm a natural redhead and I have never like dyed or colored my hair or anything. And in fact, have gone through phases of my life where I've been really yearning for a different color or very anti. Like I kick a ginger day. I'm out here. I deserve this red hair. I can't have it stripped away from me. It's my identity, whatever. So I definitely fell down the rabbit hole of TikTok as I do. And I learned all about hair glazing or glossing from the natural redheads. First off, redhead community, I'm so locked in. I want to share lore. I want to talk about it. But basically a hair glaze or gloss is kind of like a demi-permanent wash, which I like because I really don't want to feel like I'm permanently altering my color. But redheads, when we age or the amount of time we spend in the sun, just like for most folks when it comes to like sun bleaching your hair, but my hair color has drastically changed as I'm getting older. And I've really noticed it kind of within the COVID era, like this past like 4 to 5 years. And it's just kind of like made me a little bit sad. Like, again, like I just like fought for like the ginger of it all. Really bullied, growing up. But I really have been wanting to embrace my color. And I've done that for years. So I decided, and you can go to a salon and get this done. I maybe will, but I wanted to just like try like a cheaper option. So it's literally just from the brand Glaze. Check your local drugstore. You just throw it on, let it sit for, I think, literally only 10 minutes and then wash it out. I feel like it's just perked me up in such a way that I just feel a little bit more connected to like my hair natural color when I was a kid. It's just like a little bit more vibrant. And because it's kind of like a deep conditioner almost, my hair felt really amazing after. The bottle was like $15 or something. So they have like a range of colors. People are kind of glossing, like going from blonde to copper or like brown to like cherry auburn. So like you can kind of put different colors on top if you don't want to commit to like a full dye. Anyways, I just like, obviously I can't shut up talking about it. I feel like it's perked me up in the way that I would like. And it was really easy and low stakes. So I'm obsessed. Definitely hop on a gloss. Like if you want a little fun change for the summer, be my guest.
Now it's time for Step Into My Office, where you get advice from your favorite professionally qualified, personally peculiar therapists.
So here's the prompt for this week. Dear Em and Val, I didn't think it was possible, but I'm experiencing some kind of summer depression. I was so excited for the warmer months, but ever since we transitioned from spring to summer, I feel completely off. I'm irritated with the heat, dreading going to work every day, feel like I'm doom scrolling and doing nothing for myself, and I can't seem to kick this feeling. Have you ever felt this way, and where do you even start with it? Thanks, melting like a sad popsicle. Just the vision, for whatever reason, it's a bright pink popsicle and you're just like melting on the sidewalk. Also, maybe as someone's trying to fry an egg on the sidewalk because, honey, it gets hot in the summer. Okay, listener, I just want to say very, very earnestly that I feel like I'm completely in this boat right now. So how timely of this episode. And what I want to say to you is, I hear you, first off, like I feel like I'm exactly here right now. And I feel like there's multiple layers to this kind of thing in a way that I approach or would approach with people if they were experiencing this, as most people do, seasonally with winter when, we have daylight savings, it's cold, the sun's not out, it makes it really hard. There's kind of this very dramatic shift that happens with summer. And again, it's totally dependent, but just to throw out some personal examples, like June is my birthday month and it's Pride Month. And I feel like I looked at my calendar and blinked and I was like, holy fuck, I have so much stuff going on this month. And I get a little nervous for that, even though it's stuff and with people that I really love and enjoy and like my own birthday. But I feel like with summer, there comes with like a lot of built-in kind of expectations, right? Like, the meme, bus, club, another club, another club. Like that's such the vibe of the summer where it's like, okay, I gotta plan a vacation. I gotta still try to figure out how to go to work and like not hate work during the summer when it's like bright and gorgeous out and you wish you were at the pool or the beach. Or maybe this is totally not your vibe and you really love winter and you're just struggling with this seasonal part. So really maybe kind of sit with like what side of the spectrum you think you're on, and don't necessarily feel like you have to park it there and like latch onto that. I just think kind of zooming out a little bit and seeing what could be contributing to some of these feelings is important. Like I said, have all this social stuff and I have my own expectations built in of like, what do I do with my birthday? And like, I have a really hard time sometimes taking up space. So that's definitely what contributes to some of my feelings. What's contributing to yours? What's going on or what's not going on in your life where you don't have anything to look forward to? Because y'all, especially in Tennessee, summer, that stretch where we are just sweating buckets and it's swamp ass every day, it's kind of tough. Like I'm like 2 showers a day in this shit, the armpit stains, you're just hot and bothered. Like it can just be a lot sometimes. And it's just like girls and we can't change the weather. So I don't know, really start to kind of zoom out a little bit and think, what, if anything, could be contributing, and or check in if, the dreading going to work part, is that because you'd rather be out doing all of those things? Or is this more of like a burnout situation that's really being exacerbated by this time of year? So, some people have off seasons. In the field of therapy, we all talk about the summer melt or the summer slump where I'm not going to see so-and-so for a month because they're off traveling. So it can just, so many other contributing factors can be here. Very earnestly, you are not alone with this. I'm currently doing my own piecing out and finding my own place in the spectrum of this right now. So name this to someone in your life. Check in if someone else is feeling the same way to ground in not being alone, but you're not alone. And Go plan something fun, or maybe not even fun, but start with something that's so low stakes. One time this week after work, I'm going to get a pub sub and sit by a body of water if it's accessible to me, or I'm going to make a fun summer smoothie at the end of the week. No matter how little or like cheesy air quotes or mundane it is, the small stuff really matters here, especially if you don't know exactly where you're standing right now. So take care, start small. You're not alone. You got it.
And now it's time for our interview series, Living Your Activism, where we're talking to activists and advocates across a wide variety of missions and passions about how they found their thing, what they do to stay grounded and connected with joy amidst all the chaos in the world, and what it means to truly live their activism, not just as a checkbox or some burnout-inducing giant commitment, but as something that's interwoven throughout their life in a nourishing, sustainable way. Hey guys, I'm so excited to introduce our very first guest interview for our new series, Living Your Activism. And that is my friend and former coach, Ella Majors. Ella Majors, MSW, is a holistic fitness rebel on a mission to ignite fierce compassion and revolutionize what it means to be healthy and fit. She's a thought leader, professional speaker, podcast host, and the dynamic creator and host of Evolution of Fitness with Ella on YouTube, a space where strength meets soul and transformation goes way beyond the physical. Vegan since 1995, Ella holds a master's in social work and is a certified personal trainer, yoga instructor, and food freedom coach. With over 2 decades of experience in the wellness space, she's helped thousands break free from toxic diet culture, rewire self-sabotaging patterns, and build powerful plant-strong bodies they love living in. Ella is a former bikini bodybuilding champion and lifelong athlete who blends mindset, movement, and plant-based nutrition into transformational coaching that sticks. She was named one of the world's top trainers by bodybuilding.com and Shape magazine and serves on the board of Hogs and Kisses Farm Sanctuary. Based in Miami Beach, you'll find her training, teaching, filming, and adventuring with her beloved rescue chihuahua, Fiona. Ella is so dear to me, and I am excited for you to hear this conversation about animal activism. And even if you're kind of like, I don't know if I'm into that, just come in with an open mind, an open heart, and we'll see. So Ella, I'm so excited to be talking with you in this capacity again.
I'm honored to be here with you, Valerie.
Thank you. It feels so cool and like full circle, because the first time that I reached out to you, and gosh, I don't even know when that was, maybe like year and a half, 2 years ago or something. It was for a previous podcast. And then we have since worked together one-on-one and become friends. And I just admire you so much. So here we are again on the pod.
Let's do it.
So if we could start with just hearing a little bit about your story as it relates to veganism, animals, advocacy, how you came to be an advocate for the animals.
Yeah, it actually all started when I was just 7 years old. I am about to be 45 this month. So that was a long time ago, 1987 to be exact. And I was actually in I think first grade, coming out of school, got my car after school. My mom asked me how my day was, as moms do. And I told her, you know what? We learned about this guy named Daniel Boone in school. And I said, Mom, this guy was so mean. He was supposed to be a hero, but he wasn't. He killed animals and he ate them. And I said it like, oh my God, this is a horrible human. And she turned around and she looked at me and she said, well, we're just really fortunate. Nowadays, we get to go to the grocery store and that's where we buy our meat. We don't have to kill the animals ourselves anymore. And it was at that moment that I connected the food, the meat on my plate with the actual animal that it was. And I was horrified. And I right then and there, I told her, well, Mom, that's it. I'm never doing that again. And literally, I never ate meat again. Yeah. So that's where it all started.
It's so cool. And I mean, there's so many variables that go into, everyone's unique story with these significant changes and just like personality pieces.
But, you hear about a lot of kids who have that realization and then maybe, whether it's their family's not supportive of them making that change or whatever. And of course, the messaging from society is so strong in normalizing all of that. So yeah, it's just so cool that in your case, no, it really stuck. This is not a phase.
Yeah. And I have to say, I have always been a very strong-willed human. My parents joke that when I was, young enough to be in diapers, that I insisted on putting on my own diapers. I've always been very strong-willed. So when I made that decision, it was like there was no going back. And I will say that I was very lucky to have parents who were just really invested in allowing me to be the person that I was. And I was so clear, and it's not like they immediately started making vegan food for me. It was just that I started only, refusing to eat the main part of the meal and only pick at the side dishes. And eventually, what they thought would be a phase was clearly no longer a phase. Not only that, I was in school in all the writing assignments. And my parents kept some of these writing assignments where the question is, I don't know what the question was, but I would be like, I'm going to relate it back to animals. And I would say, I don't understand why people are eating meat. And if I was president, what would you do if you were president? If I was president, nobody would eat fish or chicken or any animals, because why should we eat animals? We don't need to. I'm eating all plants myself. So I knew, it was like I knew at that age that this is why I was here on earth, is to be this voice for animals. It was very clear to me at a very young age.
That's beautiful. Yeah. How do you handle it internally and externally when people hear the word vegan and immediately have a negative association or response?
Yeah, so this is something I've been dealing with since I was 15. So by the time I turned 15, I had done all the research. And back then, there was really no internet, or internet was just starting. So I can't even remember how I got connected. I think I got connected to a local animal rights organization. And then I connected with PETA and Vegan Outreach, and they would start, I got into advocacy and activism at that young of an age. And so I got sent all these pamphlets and I started learning all the things. So by the time I was 15, I turned fully vegan. And so of course, and people back then didn't even know what the word vegan was, most people, right? Mm-hmm. So that was a whole nother thing. And at that point, it was like this idea in my head, well, certainly it's just about me sharing with people what I learned, because as soon as I learned what I learned, I immediately stopped eating animals. As soon as I learned what I learned about the dairy and the egg industries and animal testing, I immediately went vegan. So now I just got to spread the word and people will immediately go vegan just like me. In my young mind, this is what I thought, which of course is not the case. And so I learned very quickly from being in the activism world that it was very threatening to people, that it not only people didn't immediately become vegan, but they got very angry and very defensive. And so that was a really bitter pill for me to swallow back then. And it was something that, it was this journey of learning how to handle that, and my whole life has been this journey of how can I be the most impactful vegan possible? What does that look like? And by the time I got to be in my young 20s, my next step in the activism or in my advocacy was to go the route of being the shining example of what it meant to have a really lean, strong physique that everyone wanted. Because when I attained that physique, people would come up to me and be like, "Whoa, how did you get to look like that? I want to look like
Tell me what you're doing."
Tell me what you're doing. And so then I could gently talk about how I was doing it, eating exclusively plants. And I would learn to say it in a way that didn't immediately create those defense mechanisms in the person I was speaking with.
Beautiful. Yeah. And how do you respond when people say something like, well, humans need our help a lot more than animals?
Ooh, yes. And I'll say yes. That's why I got my master's degree in social work, because I care about humans as well as non-human animals, right? And it's interesting, right? People want to then deflect and talk about, well, you must not care about people if you care about animals. And it's like, we don't need to choose.
Yeah, this false dichotomy, right?
No, right. So yes, I care about both deeply. And everybody kind of picks a vulnerable population that they're going to focus their efforts on, primarily. And I feel really connected on a soul level to the plight of farmed animals. So that is the population that I focus a lot of my efforts on. Now, that said, getting my undergrad and graduate degree in social work, the countless hours of volunteer work and in unpaid internships I've done for the homeless population, for underprivileged children, all these other populations, and part of me, in my human mind, I want to be like, how many hours of volunteer work have you done for humans, right? Of course, I'm not going to say that.
Right.
And hopefully they've done a lot. So it's not a comparison, and it's not a competition.
It's just challenging that logic, right? That it
has to be one or the other.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. Because it really can be both. And we can't all champion all causes. And so this is one that, you're delving into, but it's not at the expense of other things you also care about. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What is your relationship to the concepts of advocate or activist? And would you describe yourself as one or both of those things?
Yeah, I'm definitely an advocate at this point. I think activism, I don't get too caught up in those words, right? So it was very clearly I was into direct activism when I was a teenager. So that meant I was out there leafleting. I was a 16-year-old. Bless my parents' hearts, they would drop me off so I could sit in a cage on the side of the road. What parents dropped their kid off because I couldn't drive, before I could even have a license, to sit in a cage on the side of the road to demonstrate the devastating conditions of farmed animals. So I was doing direct activism back then. And I think there's a place for that. There's absolutely a place for that. My method has shifted over the years. And I do think that there a lot of times, some of those things, yes, they bring a lot of attention. And at the same time, I think sometimes, and they absolutely do at times, also turn people the other way. Yeah. And it depends on where that intention is coming from, right? And there's that tone of these things of, you're bad, look what you're doing. Here, I'm going to show you the extremely, horrifying conditions of these animals, and you're causing it. You're causing it. It's this pointing the fingers and blaming. And yes, these are people that are spending their money, but none of that matters. Right. What matters is, how can I connect with that human I'm talking to? Yeah. How can I relate to them? We've all got, if our goal, and this is what I like to talk about, is, I'm going to move through the world doing the least harm and the most good that I can. That said, I went through a phase in my life where I'm buying, fast fashion. I did that for a minute. Right. Yeah. And I think about what I was supporting when I was spending my bucks on that. Right. So who am I to then keep casting this blame on other people? We're all on our journeys. We all, for the most part, want to do better. Right. And we've all got our programming that's so hardwired into us. We've had people and influencers who have scared us into thinking certain things. So I think we've got to get to that place. And this is why it's so important to work on ourselves, to connect with this foundation of love and compassion. It cannot just be for the animals. It's got to be for people. It's got to be for people who are supporting the animal cruelty, because if we cannot connect on that love level, we're not going to change minds and hearts.
Right. Exactly. It's like, we don't persuade with judgment and hatred. Like, it just doesn't work that way. If it did, the world would be a very different place. So figuring out that way to bridge the connection. And I think the cool thing is, as we know, that yes, there may be a time and place where some people seeing the realities of animal agriculture can be extremely powerful. I know at points early in my journey, it was.
But I had to be ready for it, because before that I was like, don't show that to me. I don't want to see it. Right. Like a lot of people are. And as powerful, if not more so, have been all this sort of vegangelists that I have encountered, of the people who are saying like all the great things about living this way. And like, oh my gosh, you just get to feel aligned with your compassion. I get to drive down the road and like, I see the cows in the pasture just outside my neighborhood. And like, yeah, I have this sadness for them, but I can look at them and feel love. I don't have to feel like, so sorry. Right. So it's just, recognizing that there's ways of reaching people that can align more with like what's good about living this way, and not necessarily like the kind of fear mongering or guilting people.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think, the truth is the truth. Like, it's important for people to know the truth. Yeah. And how that truth is presented, the timing, and again, that sense of you're causing it, you're to fault, you're to blame, like that. Look what you're doing, is not the way to present it. Yeah. So yes, I feel like this should all be out there in the open, and we should all, watch these documentaries and know what's the truth, because that's just the reality of the situation. Yeah. And then we get to say, and now it's your choice to do what you want with that. And yeah.
What is a moment that you are particularly proud of in your activism or advocacy?
I guess there's a lot of proud moments. I've never really thought about that. I think one dream of all vegans, and maybe I'm generalizing, but I don't know. But I think we're all so disconnected in a sense of not having access to the animals that we feel so strongly we want to save and help. So I guess helping found the Hogs and Kisses Farm Sanctuary is something that, I don't know if I'm proud of it, but is something that really comes to mind when you said that, because I mean, just for my own, well-being, to be able to spend time with these animals that, I've known, even, when I stopped eating them and when I felt so strongly that I was here to be a voice for them, I still wasn't around them very much. Right. And so when I got to go up to this private small farm in New York and bring back to the sanctuary these pigs that were, it was an interesting story. The farmer's wife fell in love with their pigs. And so there were 11 pigs left, and they said, we're going to spare these 11 pigs. And so they needed homes. Wow. And my bestie had said, I'm going to start this sanctuary. Will you be on the board? And of course I was like, hell yeah, sign me up. Yes. And so to go up there and experience that of bringing these pigs back to this sanctuary where I knew they would live out the rest of their lives, in a place filled with love, filled with compassion, freedom, and for them to be able to be ambassadors, and we have a B&B at the sanctuary. So, people are coming and meeting these animals and having that connection. And it's just such a positive way. Another form of activism is helping people make that one-on-one connection and tell the stories of these animals that we have on the sanctuary. Is just so aligned. And so it fills my heart, it just fills my cup.
That's incredible. Yeah. When I learned that you had done that too, on top of all the other things that you do, I was just like, oh my gosh, I want to be friends with her.
Yes, cool. You have to come up and
I will for sure. If anyone listening has not visited a farm animal sanctuary, there's a whole website with a kind of a database of them, but it can be such a transformative experience. Highly recommend. Okay. On the flip side of that coin, part of activism and advocacy is that it can be extremely slow and discouraging and feel like we're not getting anywhere. So I wonder if there's a moment you can share about where you feel like you quote unquote failed or just felt so discouraged in your advocacy for animals and how you moved through that.
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's plenty of those moments for sure. But one thing that comes to mind back to my, again, teenage years when I was in direct activism, and we would plan protests for the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus. And it was so interesting because here I am, a teenager, and I'm leading these protests, right? And somebody comes out and they were like, we want to bring you back into the, backstage at the circus and show you how much we love our animals. And so they did, and they brought me back there, and I couldn't wrap my head around what they were trying to show me, because it's just like, we know what happens back there. There's tigers in teeny little cages pacing. There's elephants chained to the floor. So I could never understand that. And I was like, if they are thinking that this is okay, how are we going to get anywhere? And of course, during all those years, I mean, the amount of people walking by, throwing things at us, spewing hateful speech, all of that. And I'm a teenager, right? So that was all very disheartening, of course. And of course, I knew that what I was doing was the right thing to do, and I was going to do it anyway. Well, how many years later, I don't know what year it was exactly, that Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus, announces that they are stopping all use of animals in their show.
Yes.
This is what, 20 years later. And that moment was so powerful, to think, and for how many people said, oh, you're never going to make a difference. You're such a drop in the bucket. What you're doing is stupid. It's a waste of time. Get over it, blah, 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 and we kept up with it, and you spread the word. And then even when I wasn't doing that sort of activism, you talk to people and you say, oh, here's why I'm not going to the circus. Yeah. And you just keep that going. And eventually they stopped.
Yeah.
The thing nobody thought would happen.
Right. Change really can happen. And it's like, yeah, the whole starfish metaphor, like, well, even if that progress was slow and there was one circus where they didn't use animals, it mattered to that one elephant. It mattered to that one tiger. And I will often kind of use the metaphor too of like, because it can feel like animal agriculture is so dauntingly massive. Like, well, what is one person not eating animals going to really do? Well, of course, there's numerous sort of arguments that could be made around that. But one of them is like, I'll kind of say like, well, do you litter? And people are usually like, well, no, of course not. I'm like, oh, well, I mean, lots of other people litter. So like, what's one more cup on the side of the road? But it's like, well, there's something fundamentally inside me that's like, no, not only do I not want to litter, I want to pick up other people's trash too, right? So yeah, the small progress and the long arc bending toward justice. Kind of a related question. What do you feel like you've learned the hard way in your activism efforts?
Oh, some of this I feel like just takes some time, because there's so much pain involved in opening your heart to the suffering of trillions of beings on this planet. And the truth is, the percentage of people who call themselves vegan, it's not really changing. It's not really going up much, which can feel discouraging, right? And so there's this process that we all have to go through of getting to a place where we can still experience joy in our lives, where we can be a shining light in this world. Because if we are walking around depressed and miserable and sad and hurt all the time, who's going to see that vegan and be like, I want to be a vegan too. That's what I want for myself,
Yeah.
So there's so much inner work. There's so much work that we get to do. And I say get to do because I think this is all part of this human experience. Because again, it's like, what, ignorance is bliss? Yeah, in a sense it is. And life is so much more meaningful, so much more interesting so much more of an adventure when we're on this constant path of discovery and growth and connection. And none of those things can happen when we're ignorant. Right.
Wow.
And the level of the deep level of experiencing this world and experiencing love. The more we are connected to the pain and suffering, also, I believe, the more we have capacity to experience pure love as well. Does that make sense?
It does. And actually, I have to pull up this text message from my mom because so over this last weekend, my mom and stepdad drove to Nashville from where they live in Illinois. And then all of us drove to Montgomery, Alabama, where the Equal Justice Initiative is, Brian Stevenson's group that works with, he's a lawyer, and they work with folks on death row, and they look at the sort of how the criminal legal system is a legacy of slavery. So that through the Legacy Museum, we went maybe 5 years ago, and they've since expanded it a ton. So we wanted to see what they added. They added this whole beautiful sculpture garden. Talk about, we were from like 10 a.m. that morning until 6 p.m. just going to these different sites in Montgomery that EJI runs, and just like in the shit, right? As much as we can be observing it as white people. And she sent this text that I think captures a lot of what you're saying. So she said, "I'm so glad y'all could join us on the pilgrimage to Montgomery. It really feels like a pilgrimage to a holy place, truth-telling in the creation of beauty and community in the interest of just mercy and healing. It doesn't get any holier than that." Right? Like it's pain, and it's what activates our love, right? So it's so important. And you mentioned the word joy a few minutes ago, and I would love to know, what are some of the ways that, as someone who is willing to open your heart to all of this pain, how do you stay connected to your joy?
Yeah. Well, my dog.
Fiona.
My dog, number one, Fiona. And being out in nature. For me, that's my joy. I'm so fortunate to live in Miami Beach, Florida, where I can step outside and have a breath of ocean air, step in the water. I've gotten into movement. I'm a movement junkie per se, which has changed a lot over the years, how I move, following now my second ACL tear from sparring Muay Thai. So I've been doing a lot of energy work through Tai Chi and Qigong the last 6 months, which is a whole new adventure to me. Slowing down is very challenging, and yet I'm having some breakthroughs around that. And we do that in the park, and I'm feeling the energy flowing. Spending time with family, friends, kayaking, outdoor adventures, hiking, mountains, music, dancing. I'll get back to dancing soon. I got a few weeks, but yeah. It's the little things for me. It's the little things.
As the kids these days would say, that sounds like a beautiful dopamine menu.
Is that what the kids would say?
Yeah.
I like that. The kids know what they're talking about.
Right. Yes. So last question, what does it mean to you to live your activism?
And the word alignment comes to mind. I feel like, again, another place, way that I stay connected to joy and peace is through consistently working towards aligning my actions with my true values, the things that I truly care about in this world. And I feel like when we're in alignment, there's peace. And that's what I want for myself, is peace. And as long as we're doing that, then we're doing everything we can, whether that looks like just talking to friends or building a website and pushing out a podcast and speaking to thousands or tens of thousands of people, right? If we're living in alignment, we're energetically doing our part in this world. So
I love it. Thank you so much. This has been incredible.
Thank you, Valerie. I appreciate you.
Tell the people where they can find you.
Yes. Ella at ellamajors.com is my website. Sexyfitvegan.com, other website. We got a blog on there. And social media handles at sexyfitvegan is the best place.
Yeah, and you're doing a live YouTube show these days.
Yes, Evolution of Fitness live with Ella. So we go everything from movement to nutrition, of course, plant-based breakthroughs. We're about to have some pretty incredible guests on there. So yeah, at Sexy Fit Vegan is the handle on YouTube as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, Valerie.
And now for our last segment of the show, welcome to Fire Dumpster Phoenix. It is rough out there, y'all, and we need all the hope we can get. It's time to go dumpster diving for some positive news and rise from the leftover Happy Meal ashes together.
So I saw this story and oh my God, the video will be linked in the show notes, of course. Highly recommend going to watch it because I was crashing out. I was literally sobbing watching this video. I don't know why. It's just like very beautiful and like hit me very deeply. So this story for this week is about Valence Sams, who desperately needed a triple organ transplant. 3, which is incredibly rare. The doctor that either performed his surgery or the doctor that was in the interview literally said that this event is incredibly rare and for most cases only happens for someone about 2 to 3 times per year, just the amount of organs needed. So this was necessary due to complications of a very aggressive autoimmune disorder. And so Valence Sams very miraculously found his perfect match in April Johnson Heath's deceased son, Alec, who passed away at the age of 21. He was an organ donor and he passed away during his military service in an off-duty accident. So he was able to have the surgery. Everything was cleared in that way. But both Valence and April kind of shared that they were yearning to connect with one another after this surgery just because of how rare it was. And on the 2-year anniversary of Valence's surgery, he actually flew to Alabama to meet April and her family. And obviously, like they're meeting for the first time, but in a way, there's somewhat of a reunion here. I could cry literally talking about it, but watching these people meet one another and watching her put her hand to his heart and then she pulled out a stethoscope and she's like very intently listening to her son's heartbeat. Oh my God, what a tearjerker. It was such a I don't even have words to describe these kinds of stories and how they make me feel. It's just gutting and beautiful and raw. It's really amazing. Oftentimes I talk about how like obsessed and amazed I am by science in this segment in particular. And it's just one of those things where it really made me take a step back and think about what the word legacy means and just humanity, like how amazing that we can do this for one another. And just what a beautiful story. And just like watching them all come together was, oh God, it was chilling. So highly recommend going to check out that story. It was fantastic. That's it for this week's episode. Feel free to check the show notes and go check out Ella. She's so awesome. Stay tuned for this Living Your Activism series. We're really excited about sprinkling these in throughout the next couple of episodes, months, however we want to sprinkle it in. Stay tuned. Take care. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
This has been another episode of But For Real, produced by Valerie Martin and Emerson Ryder and edited by Sean Conklin.
But For Real is a Gaia Center production. The Gaia Center offers individual, couples, and group therapy for clients across Tennessee and in person in our Nashville office as well as coaching for clients worldwide. For show notes or to learn more about our work, visit GaiaCenter.co or find us on Instagram at the Gaia Center and at But For Real Pod.
But For Real is intended for education and entertainment and is not a substitute for mental health treatment.
Also, since we host this podcast primarily as humans rather than clinicians, we are not shy here about sharing our opinions on everything from snacks and movies to politicians and social issues.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode.
See you next time, bestie.